We actually hired a business therapist at one time while we were discussing the transition issues and the succession planning. And that was very helpful because sometimes you have to talk about tough things with your father, like how much should I make and how much should you make and how much do we share? So we were able to do that very well. We did have a really incredible experience in the 90s where we had a long-term employee that stole from us and almost put us out of business.
Welcome to Critical Thinking Required, hosted by LBW. This podcast is intended for free thinkers, entrepreneurs, and knowledge seekers. Join us as we discuss relevant financial topics, explore with guests their financial journeys, and engage with experts in industries such as space, media and entertainment, real estate, and many more. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to Critical Thinking Required. You're with your hosts, myself, Tim Bickmore, and my two colleagues, Dan Weiss and Nathaniel Leach. And today we have a guest, Skip Schrayer. Skip, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Before I get into Skip's bio, so all of our listeners and viewers know who we're speaking with today, I just want to do a little announcement, which is if you enjoy our podcast and you want to help us out, please like, share, and subscribe to our channels. So into the bio we go. We have here with us Skip Schrayer, who is the CEO of Associated Agencies and president of Auto and Home Insurance Agency. He oversees all aspects of commercial and personal insurance for individuals and businesses nationwide. Skip currently serves on the executive committee of the board of directors for the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Chicago and chair of Bright Star Community Outreach, working with African Americans and Jews to rebuild the community. Skip is the 51st recipient of the Rosenwald Award, presented annually to a person who has demonstrated a lifetime of exemplary service to the Jewish community. This is the first time a third generation has received the award, following the win of both his father and grandfather. In addition to his professional community work, Skip co-founded and co-chaired an annual men's trip to Israel. He is a graduate of the University of Michigan and Northwestern University Graduate School of Management. Skip and his wife, Lynn, have 3 children. Skip, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim. Excited to be here.
And I can imagine for all our viewers and listeners that we're going to be talking about insurance today. If they didn't get that from your bio, I think they might be lost already. So we're really excited to kind of get it kicking off. And I got a couple questions for you, Skip, and I'd like to just start from the beginning. Could you tell us a little bit about the history and your involvement with Associated Agencies?
Sure. So the business I work with was started in 1890. We're 130 years old. My grandfather ended up going into the business in the early 30s. He didn't start the business, but he ended up owning it. And my father went into the business with him in mid 50s. And then I started working full time with my dad in 1982. My dad and I ran the business together. We had a phenomenal experience. Unfortunately, he passed away relatively young in 2008. And I took over the reins and I run it with my new cousin, younger partner, Josh Hers. And we have about 150 employees. We do business all over the United States. And we have very long ties with many of the insurance companies we represent, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. We have employees that usually make their careers with us. So it's not unusual for people to spend 20, 30, 40, 50 years with us. And luckily, we have many clients that have been with us for many years. So although we're, of course, growing and getting excited for the next generation, my nephew works with me, and I have a couple of kids that might be interested in the next couple of years. So very excited about the future.
So Skip, it sounds like you've probably been there since you could walk, which is fantastic. Could you tell me a little bit about just how your role has evolved, kind of going in from one generation to the next?
Sure. So I really didn't know whether I was going to be interested in the insurance business, but during my junior year in high school, there was a recession and I couldn't find a summer job for the life of me. And I begged my father to let me come downtown and work with him. So he reluctantly said okay, because he didn't want to push me into the business. And I sat with the woman that handled our home and auto business and for the first day, and she didn't show up the rest of the summer. She was ill. So I ended up being in charge of personal insurance for the whole summer. And I really loved the business. I loved the idea that it was financial, that it was personal, that it was relationships. And I was very excited, unsurprisingly, about the business. When I graduated from a business school, when I came to work for my dad, I said, I really would like to be the CFO. I have a degree in finance. And he said, that's fine, but why don't you learn how to sell business? Because we're really a sales organization. Just try it a couple of years and then you can always be the CFO. So anyway, I'm still doing that. 40 years later, I ended up not realizing that I really loved the sales aspect of our business and developing relationships and building long-term revenue streams for our business.
And which is wonderful, and to see a third generation making it continue the success of the other two generations is extremely impressive, right? There is the old adage of shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. By the third generation, things kind of fall apart. And so I'm curious, how has it been for you to take over that legacy and continue to build it for your family? Has it been was there difficulties in the transition? Was it pretty smooth, great working relationship?
So we had a great relationship, my father and I. My father didn't have as good a relationship with his father, so I think I benefited from that. My father really bent over backwards to make sure that we got along, that we communicated. We actually hired a business therapist at one time while we were discussing the transition issues and the succession planning, and that was very helpful because sometimes you have to talk about tough things with your father, like how much should I make and how much should you make and how much do we share? So we were able to do that very well. We did have a really incredible experience in the 90s where we had a long-term employee that stole from us and almost put us out of business. And really the relationships that my father had built and the reputation he had allowed us to survive that really unsurvivable situation. Everybody told us that we should just file for bankruptcy and start a new agency. And my father would not and could not do that. And so, whatever the expression, if it doesn't kill you, it's good for you. So we not only survived, but thrived after that. And I think the fact that we worked through that together really made our relationship even stronger and better.
And what went into, you said that it was your father's relationships with his customers, with the insurance companies. Like, what went into that process as you were going through that? Like, what did the insurance companies come back and say to you? What did your employees? How did that all work out? Could you go into some detail on that?
I know. Yeah, I know. When you have a trust business, it's essential that people trust you. And I think my father's reputation was that nobody associated the bad acts that this guy had done to my father and to our firm. And we went to the state of Illinois Department of Insurance and explained what happened. We owed a lot of money to the insurance carriers, and we said that we would repay them. We went to all of our clients. Most of them were not affected by this and told them that we would be okay, and they stuck with us. We went to our insurance carriers and said that we needed them to help us through the situation, and they all did. We went to our employees and said that we're going to be okay, but we need you to stick with us. And luckily, most of them did, and went through some rough times with us where we were concerned we weren't going to be able to make payroll, to when we've been able since that time to have a very, very successful business since that time.
Thank you for that.
So I think the answer, which I think is pretty obvious, is that when you have a bad thing happen, you have to communicate and you have to be honest and you have to tell people what's happening. And if it works out, everybody's there for you.
I appreciate you. I know that there's a lot more to it than that.
Oh yeah,
but
write a book about it.
I'm sure I would read that book.
I might.
But for the purposes of this, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think I kind of actually want to go on a bit of a tangent there. I was going to ask something else, but since you brought it up, we've done a number of podcasts where we speak to great business leaders, that a number of them coming from many generations. And what we really haven't hit on, you mentioned it, is the reputation of the business and how that carries over generation to generation, employee to employee. that is an outstanding example of where the value of that. Can you speak a little bit more about within your tenure where reputation has brought you through the thicks of challenging times and how it benefits you later?
Sure. Well, that's the biggest one, but I do think that we believe the culture of our business is essential to our success. So we spend a lot of time identifying prospective employees that share our culture. The culture is we take the needs of those around us personally. So that means of course, our clients, but also our employees, and our insurance carriers we represent, and the communities that we live in and work in. And we also are looking for people that are empathetic and actually care about their customers and the people that they work with. And we also talk about integrity. And we always say to people, if you make a mistake, stand up and say you made a mistake. And then we'll figure out how to take care of it. If you make a mistake and you don't tell us about it, you're going to be fired. So I wouldn't say that we encourage mistakes, we discourage mistakes, but we also feel culturally it's important to allow people to make mistakes and to say people make mistakes and we're going to take care of it. So I think that has worked very well with the insurance carriers. I think when we send in something for them to quote, they know that it's correct and that it's accurate to the best of our ability. I think some of our competitors don't share that reputation, and then they don't get the full commitment by the insurance carriers. I think when we tell our clients that this is what you should do, sometimes even if it's more expensive than another opportunity, they believe it. I think when we tell our employees that they are going to be taken care of and that they don't feel like they have to work with somebody leaning over their shoulder looking at them all the time, I think that they know that they can trust us. And I think I think it helps in all parts of life to be a person of integrity, but I certainly think it's essential in a business, and it's even more essential in a business like ours, which is all about trust.
That integrity becomes your backbone. Would it be safe to say that, and I'm take one more step then, since we're going on this tangent, would it be
Sure.
safe to say then you feel it is associated agency's responsibility to instill not just that reputation, but the giving back to community? Is the business responsible to do that, I guess, is what I'm asking, because we know that you have done so much.
I think our employees, we're all responsible. Forgetting business, I think all of us who have been blessed have responsibilities to make sure that we have a strong community to take care of people that don't have had the blessings, the good fortune that we've had. So we believe we hire people that like that. We do business with people that care about things like that. And it's just part of our DNA.
The last piece on this tangent, it's interesting just because we know how, your bio, I think, was short actually on what you've given and done for different communities, which we really appreciate. Do you feel, having grown up in this business, that the business instilled that upon you? Was it already there? Or was that something that you and other leaders in the entity have been bringing more so to the business?
So I think that my grandfather and my father lived their lives this way, but I don't know that they actually made it part of the culture of the business. And I think that Josh Hers, my president, I'm the CEO, and I have really articulated it and made it part of our DNA in everything that we do. So I think my grandfather and father probably took it for granted that that's what people did. Josh and I don't take it for granted. We state it, we talk about it, we have company huddles. There isn't a communication piece where we don't remind people of this DNA of what we have about giving back to the community.
We applaud you for that, Skip. That's wonderful. So there's an example, a great example of how you transitioned and built upon other things. And of course, there's an evolving process in the business. We see it all the time, and I'm sure you can relate that you're pushing this boulder up the hill 1 centimeter at a time, and then you look back and it's like, wow, you've moved mountains. But you don't see that often when you're pushing that boulder. Can you talk a little bit about some of the changes, perhaps within the business, but more so within not the specific business, but the industry business that you have seen over your tenure there?
Sure. Well, I think the business has become more sophisticated. The technology has improved tremendously. It's allowed us to operate and compete with larger players. We've also seen that we need to move our business upscale, upmarket. The smaller accounts are commoditized. We won't be able to compete against the people that go online and buy their insurance. But people who have fine homes, people who have large businesses are still going to need that consultative piece that we've tried to do. The other interesting thing is that the private equity firms have found our industry. So we're getting calls almost daily from people paying silly multiples for businesses like ours. So very attractive to sell out now, especially with the capital gains rate low, which I don't know what's going to happen, but it's certainly low now. So we're seeing left and right our competitors being folded into much larger agencies. We found that to be a competitive advantage, and we are committed to being fiercely independent and to grow our business to the next generation.
With seeing these changes unfold, where do you see the future of the industry? What are we not seeing yet that is still yet to come?
Well, I think that the whole idea of risk will broaden. So traditionally, when you buy insurance, you bought property, you bought liability, you bought workers' compensation. And I think that more products have been developed and will be developed in the future to help people manage risk. So we've seen emergence of employment practices liability, cyber liability that's going through huge transformation right now. There'll be more things like reputational risk coverage, just a more universal look at risk. So
we often talk about us being an independent firm. The major value that comes with it is the ability to customize for a household, and we see the industry moving. Same issues you're talking about, same challenges, right? Where it's less and less are customizing. Is that where you see the benefit of being an independent entity? What else do you see? It just doesn't get talked about enough. That makes such an you being independent.
Yeah, I think when you see these roll-ups, what happens is the way that they are able to pay back their investors for these huge multiples that they're paying is by reducing expenses. And because we're independent and we're not looking for somebody that's looking at earnings per share, we're able to have much more patient long-term money to invest in the future. So I think that's one of the things. The other thing is I think people want to talk to people who can make decisions and do things. So if you've been with an insurance agency for 30 years and Joe is the owner, and if there's a problem, even though you're dealing with somebody else, but at 3 a.m. when your building blows up, you can call Joe. That's of huge value to people. All of a sudden, you're dealing with a very large, publicly held, private equity-backed company, and Joe's in Florida because he sold his business for $100 million. And you're dealing with the guy or woman who's handling your business, and they have no ability to do anything. And I think the fact that we're large enough and sophisticated enough to handle our size business, the size that the market that we're in, and yet small enough where our clients are really important is of huge value. And we're using it right now to grow our business. That's really our biggest value added, is that they can touch me and find me and call me when they, and my partner Josh, when they need us.
That all makes sense. It's great that you're able to add those value adds, as you say, to even those smaller policies. It's attention to details like that
Right.
that really matters. Absolutely. So moving on to a little bit more about the running of an agency. Can you talk about the operations and or management attributes, both specific to an agency of your size and also in general related to running an insurance outfit?
Sure. So it starts with what I talked about earlier is our culture. So we have to have the best people. We have to have people that are seasoned, that are trained. So we spend a lot of time hiring good people, keeping good people, and training good people. So we have we call it Associated University. We have a training system that we use both outside and inside resources to keep people trained. The culture of our business is essential. So we spend a lot of time, we have monthly huddles, we have lunch and learns, we have outings, and we constantly are talking about what we're trying to accomplish. So I think that that's key. One of the things we always talk about is owning problems. So my example is when you call Comcast to get service, every time you call, you have to tell them your mother's last name, your last four digits, your social security number. You then explain your problem. Then you're transferred to somebody else. You have to do the same thing. You finally get somebody who answers it, and then you can never call that person back to go through it. So we're trying to teach people, how would you want to feel? How would you want to be handled if you were calling up our office? So if they get you and they ask you a question that's not something that you handle, rather than saying, oh, you need to call Terry, you need to call Joe, we want our people to say, I will call you back, and then get the information and make sure, own the problem. So that's a cultural thing that you have to teach people. You have to hire people that can understand it, and then teach people constantly how to do it. So our motto is to perform and transform. We always have to continue doing our business, but we also have to transform our business as it changes with updated technology, updated ways of doing things. So we're constantly looking for different ways to do things, more efficient ways of doing things. We're also looking for curious people. So my famous story that everybody has to hear when I give them their orientation is when my father started working for my grandfather, he sat in a desk, and the woman in front of him every morning came to her desk, and there was a safe right by her knee, and she opened up the safe and she pulled out a 3-ring binder and she put it on her desk. And at the end of the day, she put it back in and locked the safe. And he was there for about 3 months, and he realized that nobody ever opened that 3-ring binder in 3 months. So he finally went up to the woman and said, I know this is none of my business. I'm just so curious what's in there. And she said, I have no idea. And he said, well, why are you doing that? She said, well, when I started, the person told me that I'm supposed to do that. So here's a person that did something for probably years, had no clue why she was doing it. So I'm always asking people, be curious. If you don't know something, don't think that everybody knows it and you're the only one who doesn't. Ask a question. If you're doing something and thinking, gee, there'd probably be a better way to do this, ask a question. And a lot of times our employees have pointed out things that we've done that there are better ways to do it. We've learned from our employees because they're in the weeds doing it. So constant change, constant learning, constant review of how our processes go. And then the other thing that's very important is we've learned to say no, because everything's a good idea. But we also try and identify 2 or 3 things at a time and just do those things until they're finished. And then we start on new things. So we are many times saying, great idea, we'll do it next year, or we'll do it in 6 months, or we'll do it in 3 years, but we can't do it now. So we're trying to accomplish things and finish things and get them over the goalpost.
I just want to touch on those 2 points right there. One, the motto of curiosity is very akin to what we like to profess to our organization and to our clients, is that there are no stupid questions. Right. I personally like to hammer that into everybody, because there isn't.
Right, of course.
It blows that. I mean, the binder, that's such a great story. It's so tragically true.
Right.
And then to the second point of, I really like that idea of that you can't attack everything at once. It's the simplicity that makes it so brilliant in my mind, because there is no way to diversify your mental frameworks to try and attack all of the problems at once. It's just not possible. So to be able to focus on a core group of situations or ideas or concepts, I think that all businesses should do that. Do they do it?
And what we always say is when you say no, you're actually saying yes to something else. You're doing something else. So when you say yes, you're saying no to something that you really should be doing. So really focusing is key.
Focus is key. That, guys, I think that should, one day when we do the thing up on the wall where we lay out our principles, focus is key.
There you go.
We're going to steal that one.
There you go. Please be my guest.
So in akin to the culture that we've spoken about, the operations and attributes that goes into running an insurance agency, I think that we would be remiss without touching on succession. Can you speak to how you think about succession for associated agencies?
Sure. So I think in order to be fiercely independent, two things need to happen in our business. One is we need to grow. So that's a huge focus of ours, is to grow our business, always be growing. Because if you're not growing, you're dying. And the second thing is you have to replace yourself. Good leadership requires replacing yourself. So as much as I would like to say I'm going to live forever, I know that I'm not. And I also know that how people look at our business depends on who our leadership is. So I was very fortunate that my cousin Josh agreed to become the president and provide a succession plan. And we worked out a deal financially for both of us, so that I really am not thinking of retiring. I don't think it's in the cards for me, but I realize that we need a younger face for our business. We need to do that to attract younger people. We need that to attract new clients. And so it's very important that I am willing to do that. And I know he also is willing to do that. And if my children or his children perhaps are eventually interested in the business, he's going to be willing to transition to them. So I think it's very, very important. And we actually have purchased some insurance agents over the past couple of years where they haven't come up with a succession plan, and they end up where they have to sell. And they don't always get to sell at the best price because they haven't made provisions for growing the business. We've also been able to get business from smaller agents that have kept holding on to their accounts for life, but they didn't invest in the technology, they didn't invest in people, and we were able to go in and swoop it away because we had invested in the people and the technology. But I'm not retiring. So my wife won't let me. It's not going to happen.
My wife is not in the same boat.
Okay, all right. She wants
one day it's going to be semi-retirement. Full retirement, I don't think so. I don't think she'd be able to stand me, but semi-retirement, part-time. That's
I'm not going to, as long as I'm healthy and able, I'm going to keep going.
Right on.
It's too much fun.
Well, well, with that, I think that we're going to wrap it up from here. So I'll start with our little round robin table. I appreciate going first and then going last in the round of questions because your answers are more fresh in my mind. So for me, it would have to be focus is key, and there are no stupid questions. Those to me are mottos to live by. I mean, it's not only with regards to business or professional relationships, or it's our clients asking us questions, or vice versa. It's also within your personal life, in my opinion.
For sure.
Your partner has to take the stupid questions. That's a part of the deal.
Maybe not repetitively, but yes, they do.
Oh, I do it repetitively.
Me too.
That's all I have for me. Dan?
There was a lot of wisdom there, Skip. Thank you very much for sharing all of that. I wrote down a number of things you quoted you. You said, like Nathaniel mentioned, focus is key. A good leadership requires replacing yourself. If you're not growing, you're dying. We've heard that many times over. Perform and transform is very important. I loved owning your problem or owning the problem. And of course, I'm not retiring because my wife won't let me. But I think my favorite really is be curious. Yeah, that's a fantastic concept to always hold, right? Like there's the youthful face, like you mentioned, and then there's the youthful mind, and the youthful mind remains youthful because it remains curious. So we a lot of talk today about reputation and culture, really fostering that, and really with that kind of mindset, there's no doubt that reputation and culture won't still be there 130 years down the road from now. So
God willing. Thank you.
God willing, and thank you for everything that you've done for us today and in the community at large as well.
My pleasure.
So I guess I'm the last one before I let you go, Skip, because we always leave the best for last. But when listening to this whole podcast and your story and some of the insights like Dan and Nathaniel have mentioned, the humbleness that you've gone through is extraordinary. And I think it also exudes the success that you've had over the years. It's not easy to do 3 generations in a business. It's just not. There is a reason why there is the motto, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. I thought it was actually quite commendable that you and your dad went to a business therapist. You're the first person that I've heard that has brought a professional in to help through some really difficult times. And the willingness to say, to be a good leader, you have to replace yourself. The humbleness of that is just something that I hope I can do one day, because I think it's so important. And to bring someone in to be the face of the company, knowing that that's what's best for the business is just, it sounds easy to do, very difficult to execute on. Usually is what it comes down to. So I think that a lot of people could learn a lot of things from what you've said today, even though it's been a short, 30 to 40 minutes, but I commend you on how you've run the business, and not knowing you, but I can tell that you guys will be successful if you continue that culture and that mindset, if it continues down the road. So I really, really enjoyed your thoughts, but as I said, best is for last. So Skip, please take us home.
No, I appreciate your questions and your interest in our company and my thoughts. And I think the other thing is that we're having fun. And I really do think you have to, not that business is always easy, because it's not always easy, but it should be fun. And every day, winning is fun. And I get more of a kick when these young people who I'm mentoring get a big account than when I get a big account, that I help them become successful and raise their families and live well. That means a lot to me. So I'm loving it every day. Not every day, but most days. Most days I really enjoy it. So thanks so much for asking and letting me be part of it.
Thank you again, Skip, for joining us tonight. We appreciate all of your insight, and thank you to our audience for joining us as you do every week. We appreciate your attendance, and stay curious. Have a great night, everybody.
There you go. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for taking the time to start your journey of thinking differently and listening to LBW talk about stuff they love. Until next time,